Number 5 on this list is the demon spirit of Hans Trapp. Back in the 1400s in France, there lived a very powerful and rich man named Hans Trapp. Hans was extremely well off and had quite a lot of influence in the region he was living in. This wasn't enough for him though, he wanted more. Described by others as being extremely greedy and merciless, Trapp started engaging in some very questionable methods to grow his fortune. In fact, it's reported that Trapp went so far as to make some deals with the devil. Once this reached the ears of the church, they very swiftly excommunicated Hans Trapp and sent him away from their lands, confiscating all of his property and wealth along with it. Embarrassed and stripped of all of his power, Hans was furious at the church. He made his way into the mountains where he built an extremely makeshift home out of the materials that he had available to him. It was in this self-made den that he stewed and brooded. His anger and frustration cooked and it bubbled to a point where Hans Trapp could be described as being completely evil. Right around this period of time as well is when his mind started to go, or at least that's what people assume, because what he does next is not something that any sane person would do. Hans Trapp gathers up straw from around his home and makes himself into a scarecrow. Then on Christmas, he waited on an abandoned road for travelers to stumble upon him. Sadly, it was a 10-year-old boy who walked past him first. Hans Trapp stabbed the boy to death and then took his body and dragged it back to his home. It was there that he cut up the body and turned it into a meal as a way of praising Satan. It's said that before he could eat it though, God struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning for being so abhorrently evil and sent him straight to hell. Good riddance, God. However, now on Christmas, the demonic spirit of Hans Trapp breaks out of hell and will hunt for children who haven't been good. If a child has been bad, then he will find them as his scarecrow self. Basically, he will be summoned, but he will only be summoned to you if you've been bad this past year. So be good, and you should be safe. Number 4 on this list is the Karakonkalos. Now this creature is known to some to be the Christmas Bigfoot and lives in Turkey. It only appears during the Christmas holidays and there is actually nothing that you can do to stop it. That's right, you actually have no ability to summon or unsummon this beast. However, you do have a say in whether or not it chooses to kill you. If you happen to be walking on the streets of Turkey during the Christmas holidays, then there is the potential for you to run into this creature. Now it's important to not freak out, however that's easier said than done, because this demon is pretty scary. It is a very large, hairy creature that reminds a lot of people of Bigfoot, but with potentially a little bit more ogre-esque qualities to it. Even though this creature may appear as just a brute on the surface, it's actually very intelligent, and if you run into it, it will want to ask you a riddle. Now you have to answer this riddle. If you walk away, the demon will most likely take serious offense and make you pay with your life. The riddle itself is very dangerous too though, because your answer must include the word black. If it does not include this word, then you will be killed right where you stand. You also need to make sure that you get the answer to the actual riddle correct, because a wrong answer could cost you your life as well. Sadly, this creature is difficult to avoid. Sometimes it takes a more tactful approach in getting your attention, waiting outside your home and mimicking the voice of someone you know until you come out and you have to play with it. One way it will occasionally kill you as well is by immediately paralyzing your body in a trance. It's said that it has the capability and then it will put you into a deep trance and leave you outside so that you will just freeze to death. The entire time though during this trance, your brain is cognizant as well, and you will have to be conscious as you slowly die. Maybe just avoid trips to Turkey during Christmas time, folks. Number 3 on this list is the Gryla. Now this is a demon that had its origins actually come from a television series called Tales from the Dark Side. This was a horror television show in the mid-80s that gained a decent following. The Gryla is said to be a demon that lives very close to Santa Claus. Separated from Santa's workshop by a mountain, the Gryla lives alone in an abandoned ship. This ship would have been an old exploratory ship used by sailors several decades ago when they were searching the Arctic. They clearly lost their sense of direction though, and all eventually died from starvation or the cold. The Gryla now calls this boat its home, which is slightly strange because it actually hates getting wet. Its appearance is pretty disgusting. It has long, slimy arms with massive demon-like hands and huge veins just pumping what looks to be this bluish sludge through its body. It's described in the show as being the most dangerous creature in the world. Lucky for us, this dangerous creature lives in the deep Arctic. However, there is a way for you to summon it. Even more than getting wet, the Gryla hates its name most of all. Apparently, every time you say its name, its ears will grow. This continues until they're big enough to act as wings, and the Gryla will fly out from the Arctic and come after the person who's been saying its name. Now, this is not something that you want to do though, because it won't be too pleased when it finds you, and taking this thing on in a fight probably will not end well. Now, nobody has any idea how many times you have to say this thing's name before its ears grow large enough to come after you, but I think in this segment I've probably said it like 5 or 6 times now, so probably a good time to transition, guys. Number 2 on this list is Frau Perchta. Frau Perchta is a Christmas time demon witch creature in southern Germany and Austria. She has an iron nose that is in the shape of a beak. Her clothes are all beaten up old rags, and she carries around a cane. That's not the only thing that she carries around though, because she also has a very sharp knife hiding beneath those grotesque rags that she wears. Frau Perchta is especially dangerous to the individual of the house who does the spinning. Now, when I say spinning, I'm not referring to like a bicycle spinning. I'm referring to the action of weaving clothes. Yeah, this is an ancient legend, and it's said that this demon, Frau Perchta, is very specific about how she wants this spinning done. If you haven't completed your spinning by the correct date, which many people believe to be January 6th when the Christmas season finishes, then she will come for you. Now, the severity of what she does will be determined by you and how much you have or have not accomplished. If all of your spinning is done, then you're safe and your home won't warrant a visit. If only half of it is done though, then you can expect the things that you haven't already spun to be lit on fire, which could then in turn cause your entire house to burn down. Now, that's pretty bad, but listen to this. If you haven't spun everything that you need to, and when she gets to your house is a mess, dishes aren't done, floor isn't vacuumed, whatever it may be, well, that's when she gets the knife. The legend says that if Frau Perchta isn't satisfied with the state of your home, then she will come into your room while you are asleep and disembowel you with her knife. She will take all of your innards, throw them around your room, and fill your dead body back up with rocks and sticks. I mean, not that the rocks and sticks matter to you at this point, your whole freaking organs are all over the floor, but it's still pretty bad. Either way, if you're living in Germany or Austria, I highly recommend bringing out the Swiffer and getting to work, because if you don't, you may just summon Frau Perchta. Number 1 on this list is the Stragel. Now, this is a kind of add-on to the last entry of Frau Perchta, but also different in its own right. Frau Perchta, when she's flying around the region checking the homes for their cleanliness and spinning, will often be accompanied by a group of demonic assistants. If Santa has his kind-looking elves, then this is Frau Perchta's version of that, but really evil. These demons look like devilish wildebeests. They have long hair all over their bodies, run on 2 legs, long sharp horns coming from the crown of their head. Their faces are big and red and accentuate their large teeth that they have. These creatures aren't as concerned with the cleanliness of your home though. They have their own evil mission to uphold during Christmas time. It is said that as these demons traverse the region with Frau Perchta, they are looking for children who were bad. Now, everyone's heard the story about Santa Claus bringing you coal if you were bad this year instead of presents, but these beasts bring something far worse: death. If they stumble upon a home that has a bad child in it, which they're capable of sensing, then they will go into that home and tear the child from their family. They will then proceed to brutally rip apart the body of this as a form of punishment for being bad this year. It is said that some parents can try and stop this from happening by leaving a meal on the front step. If these demons are satisfied with this meal, then they may leave that child alone for this year, but if they aren't, then they will break into the home and complete their mission. Similar to Frau Perchta, these demons can be avoided though. It's up to you as a child to be good all year, not only so Santa can bring you presents, but so these demonic beasts of the night don't come into your home and feast on your flesh. That's kind of the main reason, I would say.
Coming in at number 5, we have Alcatraz. The island of Alcatraz has always been a place for punishment. In its early days, it was a place of banishment for miscreants. People were sent to the island to be tormented by the ghosts that have always haunted the land. And if that didn't work, they would fight for what little they had to share on the island. In 1934, the notorious federal prison of Alcatraz was built. The torturing of souls continued during the prison's time. It was eventually closed in 1963 and is now a tourist location for those brave enough to walk the haunted land. There is a lot of paranormal stories that came out of Alcatraz for those who visit it today. The screams of past inmates or the feeling of being watched. But while the prison was open, the guards told a story of something that happened to both of them and the inmates on one Christmas day in the 1940s. Although the prison was known to be a horrible place to be locked up, once in a while the guards did show what little compassion they were allowed. They decided to give the inmates a great Christmas dinner. Everyone was enjoying themselves at the meal when suddenly the joy was brought to a fast end. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped and all of the candles were blown out. There was a moment of silence as no one knew what was happening or how to react. They were all in a state of shock. Suddenly, in the middle of the room, an apparition appeared. It appeared as an older man in a grey suit. After a few moments of stunned silence, a prisoner shouted at the apparition in disbelief and it vanished. It brought the Christmas celebration to a quick end and the prisoners were sent back to their rooms shaken and confused. They murmured among themselves about what they just saw, trying to make sense of it. The guards were too shaken to stay in the residence, so they took turns on shift while others made the journey home. The warden James Johnson told the story partially as a warning to others who worked there in case the apparition ever returned. Coming in at number 4, we have Hever Castle. For anyone who is unfamiliar with Anne Boleyn, she was the second wife to King Henry VIII. Henry went to great lengths to marry Anne. Divorce was not allowed within the Catholic Church during this time. Henry decided to end ties to the Catholic Church and create the Church of England, just so that he could have a divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Henry was determined to get a male heir to his throne and famously went through 6 wives to achieve this. He got his divorce and married Anne Boleyn. She gave him a daughter. She did give birth to a male heir, but unfortunately he did not make it. After this, he grew bored of her and had her tried with adultery. Anne was sentenced to beheading and died on May 19th. Henry remarried on May 30th. Anne's story was tragic, and usually tragic ends leave spirits with unfinished business. Since her death, there have been rumours of her being spotted around Hever Castle. Hever Castle was her childhood home in Kent. It was reportedly the place that made her most happy, and she missed being here during her marriage. It is said that if you were to visit the castle on Christmas Day, you would see her walking the grounds. Guests have seen a figure believed to be her dressed in all white while walking over the stone bridge towards the home, as if she is finally returning home each Christmas to be with her family. Coming in at number 3, we have Bramshill House. This story started back in the 17th century. A young woman named Anne was getting married on Christmas Day at Bramshill House in Hampshire, England. After the wedding, the guests were all enjoying the celebrations. It was tradition for the wedding guests to carry the bride to her bedchamber at the end of the evening. The bride wanted to play a game before the end of the evening though. She wanted to hide and have the guests go and find her. She was given a 10-minute start. The guests looked high and low everywhere they could, but they could not find her. The guests started talking that she had fled, leaving her new husband, Lord Lovell, behind. He was distraught and didn't believe that his love would ever leave him like this. He never stopped looking for her. He looked for her for years. She never showed up. On one day, 50 years after her disappearance, he was spending some time at Bramshill House. Mourning his lost love, he was looking around the attic, drawn to it for some reason. He was knocking on the wood when he found a secret hidden door. Inside, he found an old wood chest. He pried the heavy door open, which appeared to be stuck. When he did manage to open the chest, he found the remains of his love, still in her wedding dress, clutching her flowers. There were scratches covering the inside of the lid. It seemed that she thought she had found the perfect hiding spot and climbed inside. The lid closed and locked on her, leaving her trapped forever. It seems she gave her escape a desperate attempt. As he found her, he broke down. He was distraught, looking for her for the past 50 years, but finding she had met such a tragic end didn't make him feel better. At that moment, she appeared to him. She didn't speak, but he felt a warm presence around him, as if she was saying it was okay. All she wanted for him was to finally find out what happened. Since she was found, other guests have reported seeing her around the grounds. A bride in her dress had been seen walking the hallways late at night and around the grounds in the dead of night. It is said that if you're there forget on Christmas night you may hear a woman crying, mourning her lost love and her married life that she never got to experience. Coming in at number 2 we have Highwayman. This happened on a woodland road on Christmas Eve. A highwayman is the term given to men who typically on horseback would hold travellers at gunpoint to rob them back in the 18th century. There was a particular notorious highwayman in this area named Gilbert. One evening, a woman and her father were travelling through the area with their stagecoach. When they came across his path, he stopped the coach and ordered them to get out. As the woman got out of the coach, the horses got spooked and took off into the night. When the woman looked into Gilbert's face, she instantly recognised him. He had killed her brother a couple of months previously. Without hesitation, she pulled a concealed knife from under her cape. She threw the dagger into his stomach and fled. When the horse got under control, the dad returned to rescue his daughter. They found Gilbert on the side of the road. He had already passed from his wounds. They couldn't find the daughter though. The local village began to look for the daughter all through the woods. When they finally found her, she had been driven mad. They brought her home and never recovered from the experience. Something in her had snapped in those woods. From that day, everyone avoided them. It is believed that the land is now cursed and the woods are haunted. It's said that if you were to wander into the woods on Christmas Eve, you'll see the ghostly scene repeat itself at the same time it did that evening. Gilbert was buried not far from where he passed, and it's believed his spirit is angry from what happened. Be careful not to stumble upon his cursed land. And finally, in at number 1 we have Christmas Day. This is a disturbing story of one man in California and his horrific act at Christmas. The story started when the man and his wife had an argument on Christmas Eve. The wife was pushed, she knocked her head on the toilet and passed away. The man carried her to bed to sleep even though she was no longer with them. The story is told by their eldest child who was 17 at the time and witnessed everything. The man then went on to prepare the presents under the tree for the children the next morning. The next morning when they came down to celebrate Christmas, the mother was sat propped up on the sofa. One of the daughters told the police, "I remember trying to touch my mum and she was just rock hard, cold, and I said, 'Mummy,' and she didn't respond." He finally called the police after the children had opened the presents. The man was sentenced to jail. A few years later, a new family moved into the home and it was coming up to Christmas time. On Christmas Eve, when the children had gone to bed, the parents were preparing for the morning. They suddenly felt the air in the home go cold. They heard cries from upstairs and went to see if it was one of the children. They realized the children were still sound asleep in their bed. The tap started running, so they followed the sound and turned it off. Already scared about what was happening, they were unsure what to do. The mother looked in the mirror and saw a woman staring back at her. The woman mouthed, "Help." At this point, the woman screamed in terror and ran out of the bathroom. The husband went to look but didn't see the same apparition. The couple were shaken. After this, nothing else happened over Christmas. After looking into it, they found out the tragic events that occurred in the home. In California, you only need to disclose a death in the home if you specifically ask. They didn't ask and therefore had no clue about any of this until it happened. She was shocked to see the picture of the woman who had died. That was exactly who she had seen in the mirror that Christmas Eve. Coming in at number 5 we have Knecht Ruprecht. There are many different stories about Knecht Ruprecht. Some say he is a demon, others say he is a dark elf. The word Knecht in German means servant. He is a servant to St. Nicholas at Christmas time. There is a story told to the children of Germany how he became the servant of Father Christmas. One night St. Nicholas was travelling across Germany and needed to rest for the night. He found a little inn tucked away in a forest. When he entered the inn, he noticed that something didn't seem right. He had stumbled onto a crime that had just happened at the inn earlier that night. Ruprecht was the innkeeper. He had taken the lives of his 3 sons. He had then put their bodies into the pickling barrel. St. Nicholas, due to his great power, was able to bring the boys back to life. He took Ruprecht to punish him for his actions. It is said he cursed him with immortality. That way he could forever suffer as his servant to repay his crimes. Knecht Ruprecht is a wild-looking man with a great bushy beard, dressed in a hooded brown cloak. He is always seen carrying a large stick and a bag at his waist. It is said he has bells attached to his cloak so you can hear him coming. Children in Germany are taught that Christkind brought gifts on Christmas Eve, while St. Nicholas brings treats on December 5th. Then there is Knecht Ruprecht. He is a warning to children. If you're not appreciative of your gifts, if you're nasty to others, he will come and take you away. He would come to your door at the side of St. Nicholas. He did all of his heavy lifting. He would make sure that you knew your prayers. If you had a bad year, you would either receive a lump of coal or be stuffed into his bag and carried away. Some today even have stories of being taken away from their family, being made to do strenuous tasks like cutting firewood, then being returned as a warning to change their ways before it's too late. Coming in at number 4 we have Gryla. Gryla is an ogress from the mountains of Iceland. During the majority she watches over from the mountains, only appearing around Christmas time. She is similar to Frau Perchta, helping to deal with naughty children. She is crueler though. Not only does she take naughty people, but she cooks them into a stew. Gryla does not work alone, she has a lot of helpers. She has 13 sons known as the Yule Lads. They are not as cruel as their mother. During the Christmas season they will play pranks on people, while also watching over their mother. She also has a giant pet cat named the Yule Cat. If you're naughty or nice, that does not matter to the Yule Cat. You can be an adult or a child, the Yule Cat will eat anyone they come across. The only thing that the cat does not eat is people who have received new clothes for Christmas. So f***ing weird. She is married to her third husband, Lepaluo. He lives in the Dimuborgia Lav Fields. This is known as one of the most supernatural locations in the world. There are many tales to scare anyone from attempting to visit. It is reportedly the site where Satan himself fell to earth. Gryla is feared throughout Iceland. She is a warning to all children to behave or you will be on her list. Once you're on her list, there is nothing you or your parents can do to stop her from coming to take you away. Coming in at number 3 we have Bertha. Bertha, also known as the Frau Perchta, is a Christmas time witch from southern Germany and Austria. Her appearance is that of an old crone. She has a beaked nose made of iron. She wears rags and carries a crane. She hides a large knife under her rags. Bertha is known for her obsession with domestic neatness. She is obsessed with people keeping a clean home. Legend has it that you have to have your home in order by January 6th. By this time you should have made sure your home has been cleaned for Christmas. This goes back to an old tradition when women were not only homemakers but were expected to make the clothing for their family. On this day is when you would start to create the clothing after the holidays. Bertha's job was to punish these lazy women who hadn't started their weaving. In more modern tellings of Bertha, she looks for domestic distress. A messy home will attract her vengeance. She is said to set fire to a messy home. She looks to clear the mess while also punishing the lazy. Unlike the others on this list so far, this is not a tale to scare children, but the adults. If you don't take care of your home, then she will take care of you. Apparently there is one thing that might save you. If you leave out a bowl of traditional porridge for her, she might forget the mess. Coming in at number 2 we have Belsnickel. Many people have heard of Belsnickel thanks to The Office. Belsnickel comes from folklore in Pennsylvania, Dutch communities originating from Germany. He is also often seen as a right-hand man to St. Nicholas. Belsnickel likes to dress in furs and sometimes wears a mask with a long tongue. Carries around a whip in order to beat those who have been naughty throughout the year, but also cakes, nuts and sweets in his pocket to reward those who have been good. In some areas they are not told of Santa or St. Nicholas at all. They only know Belsnickel to decide who is naughty or nice and give them the appropriate gifts, or a whipping. Belsnickel shows up to homes 2 weeks before Christmas. He will ask you a question and your answer decides if you have been nice. If you answered correct, he would throw candies on the floor. If you got excited and jumped for the candies too soon, you would also be seen as naughty. Although Belsnickel would literally strike down with his whip those he did not think were worthy people, still prepare and celebrate the impending arrival of Belsnickel. It is said that there were dances and songs sung for Belsnickel to try and win his favor before judgment. He is feared but also loved by those who have always been on his good side. Since the Christmas episode of The Office where Dwight spreads his Christmas joy through dressing up as Belsnickel, he has seen a revival in popular culture, even appearing in the Christmas Chronicles too, as the dark elf who turned on Santa and is looking for revenge for not feeling a part of the Christmas family anymore. Belsnickel is always depicted as an angry and violent version of St. Nicholas. He is fascinating to read about, but I don't think I want a visit from him anytime soon. And finally, in at number 1 we have Krampus. Of course, in at number 1 is Krampus. Krampus is by far the most dangerous and terrifying on this list. He is not a dark elf or a witch looking for revenge, but a demon. Some even say he is the brother of Satan. Some say that Krampus folklore even predates that of St. Nicholas. He was then incorporated into Christian winter celebrations, being paired with St. Nicholas, who of course is the good side to the bad depiction. Krampus resembles the devil with large horns and red skin. He has sharp, dangerous teeth with dark, sunken eyes. He has a large tongue that he also keeps hidden, as well as hoofed feet. Sometimes he will choose to wear a hooded cape to hide his face. The cape resembles that of Satan's, so he can trick people into thinking he is him. Overall, he appears to be a half goat, half demon nightmare, so he's extremely terrifying. Unlike the others on this list, he has direct ties to the underworld and is able to haul those he sees as naughty down there as punishment. Austria banned all mentions and celebrations of Krampus in 1932, as it was seen as a celebration of the devil and they were fearful of what he could and might do to people. Krampus also carries chains, appearing to once have been his own shackles. He now uses them to keep people in line. The event, called the Fest of St. Nicholas, is celebrated in Europe on December 6th. On the night before this, Krampus appears, joined by St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas only concerns himself with the good, delivering gifts and spreading joy to them, while Krampus takes care of the bad. Depending on the severity, you would either receive coal or be taken away to the underworld, all down to the judgment of Krampus. After being banned for many years due to the danger he can cause, Krampus is not making a massive comeback. Due to all of his depictions in popular culture, Krampus is celebrated now more than ever. We do need to be careful though, Krampus is not someone you want to mess with. Satan has sent him to deal with the bad around Christmas time, and he has all the same powers as his brother. He is a ruthless demon who can be cruel when it comes to his work. That being said, if you do leave offerings out for Krampus, it is said to help with his judgment. After all, the devil is greedy, and demons can often be swayed if there is something promised to them. All of this comes down to one thing: be good or you might have all 5 on this list to answer to come Christmas. There is no shortage of vengeful urban legends who will look to punish you.
Number 5 on this list is the Nisse. The Nisse, or oftentimes called the Tomten, is a tiny little creature that resembles a gnome and comes from Scandinavian folklore. This little creature is said to live in someone's home all year round without us ever even knowing about it. It's around Christmas time though that some may become aware of his presence. During the rest of the year, the Tomten is said to protect the house and do good things for you, but around Christmas time, it feels like it deserves a little bit of a reward. A hard year of working and protecting should warrant some sort of gift to this little creature after all. If you don't give this little guy anything though, or offend him, then that's when things can go very badly for you. These tiny guys may appear small, but they have incredible strength for their size. They also have a very mischievous head on their shoulders as well. If you ever offend this creature or don't leave him a gift, then he'll start causing problems around your home. In fact, he'll become so mischievous and cause so many problems that it's said that he's caused people to lose their minds before. This is one outcome that's certainly not very desirable, but it may be even better than what some Tomtens do. Some of them, when they get super offended, don't even beat around the bush at all, but they'll reveal themselves to the homeowner and bite them. Now these are small little guys, so their bite wouldn't be massive, but it's said to have an extremely toxic venom that will take someone's life in minutes. This is one of those creatures where you need to actively make sure to not summon if you want to stay safe. Don't leave too much of a mess in your home, and make sure to include a tiny little gift come Christmas time, or else things around the house could start going wildly wrong. Number 4 on this list is Belsnickel. For those fans of The Office out there, you might be familiar with Belsnickel because Dwight actually comes dressed as him in one episode. The legend of Belsnickel comes from Germany and the Netherlands, similar to most of the Christmas time demon legends if I'm being honest. Unlike some of the other legends though, Belsnickel doesn't look too much like a demon, he actually kind of just looks like a man. Dressed in a massive fur jacket, Belsnickel is said to be a loud and crotchety man who determines whether children have been good or not. Although you can actually get rewarded from a visit from Belsnickel, you probably still don't want one because the punishment, it can be pretty harsh. Belsnickel will appear several weeks prior to Christmas and show himself to children. He'll then ask them if they've been good or not during the year. Based on their answers and how they respond, he's going to determine whether they deserve treats or to get punished. The treats are nice. He carries cakes and candies and nuts, and he'll give them to good children who've been nice all year long and show proper manners. The bad and greedy children though, they'll get the whip. A Philadelphia newspaper writes, Mr. Belsnickel makes his personal appearance dressed in skins or old clothes, his face black, a bell, a whip, and a pocket full of cakes or nuts. And either the cakes or the whip are bestowed upon those around. He will apparently the children who are bad senselessly and without mercy. The problem is you can't really do anything to summon him or not summon him. He sort of just decides to show up. Now he's only going to show up to children, so I suppose if you don't want to summon him then don't be a kid, but that really isn't in your control. If you are a kid though and you do run into him, then I highly recommend being as kind and reserved as possible. A nice chocolate cake is far better than the alternative in this case. Number 2 on this list is the Yule Cat. The Yule Cat, believe it or not, is actually the pet of Gryla and her 13 Yule lads. This isn't your standard cute house kitty though. Google describes this feline as a huge and vicious cat who's described as lurking about the snowy countryside during Christmas time and eating people who have not received any new clothes clothes to wear before Christmas Eve. That's right guys, similarly to Gryla, this cat couldn't care less about how you've acted this year round. It only cares that you managed to get some sort of new clothing. Which frankly is kind of ridiculous. Like, what if somebody doesn't get us any clothing prior to Christmas time? We actually have no control over this. And people have commented on how silly this legend is before as well. Like, it doesn't really make any sense. But we have to factor in how it all started. The legend makes a ton of sense if you happen to be a farmer who happened to farm wool and who had to motivate their workers to process all of the autumn wool before Christmas time. Apparently this is where the legend began and kind of took off in Iceland after that. Nowadays though, the legend is massive, even more massive than Gryla herself. So basically, if you live in Iceland and don't want to summon this beast, then you'd better make sure that at least one present under the Christmas tree is some new clothing. Number 5 on this list is hitting the elf. As far as the story with the elf on the shelf goes, if a child is to touch the elf on a shelf, then all of its magical abilities will leave, and the only way you can bring it back is to sprinkle cinnamon around it and leave it overnight. If you do that, then its magical abilities will return, and it will continue reporting to Santa Claus. However, there's a legend that if instead of touching the elf, you hit it or abuse it in some way, rather than lose its magical ability, you turn the elf into a force of evil. Similar to the legend of Krampus where he will punish you for being bad, this elf will do something similar if you abuse it and it labels you as a bad kid. Now that you're labeled as an especially bad kid and have harmed the elf, it will turn from a nice elf into an evil elf meant to make you pay for your actions. If you do this, then you can expect the elf to awaken in the night, except instead of reporting back to Santa Claus, it will enter your room and beat you the same way that you beat it. This will be an extended torture session from this now demonic elf whose only mission is to make you feel the pain that it felt. This process will occur every night right up until Christmas time, when the elf will finally go away. However, that might mean that you could be getting tortured every evening by a demonic elf for weeks. Apparently, even if you try to kill this elf or send it away during the daytime when it should once again sit on your shelf, it will still come and find you in the night and be even angrier than it was before. Nobody knows how you can combat this thing if this ever was to happen to you. So the legend just further enforces that you shouldn't touch the elf on the shelf, and if you do, then make sure you don't intentionally harm it in any way. Number 4 on this list is the tiny camera. The whole elf on a shelf thing has really taken off in the last few years, with millions of tiny little elves being sold. It has also become one of the biggest trends come Christmas time and synonymous with the holiday itself. The whole nature of the elf on a shelf is to watch you in your home and make sure that you're good. We suspend our disbelief a little bit and believe that this little tiny elf doll comes to life and then reports that back to Santa. In one family's elf on a shelf though, this info wasn't going back to Santa Claus at all. In 2011, a family had an elf on the shelf for about 3 weeks before they noticed this wasn't just an innocent doll. Inside the elf was a tiny camera that was sending video to a feed. The camera was dead when they found it, but they have no idea how long it would have been running and recording them. This sparked a theory that the elf on a shelf is a method for big corporations to get inside our homes and learn more information about us. People have even gone further with this and theorized that it may be the government who's behind this and wants to have an extra eye on what's going on in the typical domestic lifestyle. It's also possible that in that one instance with the family, a creeper installed the camera and it was going to one select person. They never found out how the camera got there or who it was going to, so it's left it up in the air for people to speculate on. Having thousands of mini cameras installed in these tiny elves to watch us seems a little bit far-fetched to me, but we've seen the government or corporations do crazier things before. Number 3 on this list is Mormo. Mormo is the name given to one very particular elf on the shelf who is quite unlike the rest of them. Legend says that there is one elf that tries to impersonate an elf on the shelf and break into your home. This creature is a demon though, whose only intentions are to kill. This legend started due to a brutal murder which took place a few years back. A wife and a husband had both been killed in a way that the police had an extremely hard time understanding. When the authorities got to the home and discovered the crime scene, there was blood everywhere and the couple was both lying in the middle of their living room. There was no signs of forced entry and nothing was taken though. The authorities thought that it might be a murder-suicide, however the manner of their death indicated that a third party was involved. One thing that stood out to the police was the blood-spattered elf on a shelf positioned on the mantelpiece in full view of whatever it was that took place. The police were never able to determine the true cause of death, but this story sparked the legend of Mormo, the demon elf on the shelf. Now people believe that every time you get an elf on the shelf, you are simply rolling the dice and could end up with Mormo.
If you do, then it's very possible that you and your family will die in a tragic and unexplained way before Christmas time. I'm not sure how much validity this has to it, kind of seems like somebody really ran with the story on this one, but having a devilish killer elf on the shelf like Chucky certainly isn't a pleasant thought. Number 2 on this list is that the entire Elf on a Shelf story was constructed by a demon. The entire premise behind the Elf on a Shelf is a little creepy to begin with. You're letting this magical little doll into your home to watch and judge your actions, then when you're asleep, this doll gets up and flies back to Santa to let him make a final judgment on if you are good or bad. It's basically like a Christmas version of Big Brother. That being said though, we love Christmas and we love Santa so much that when we think about Santa, it doesn't seem so bad. But what if this elf on the shelf isn't reporting back to Santa at all? What if it was reporting back to a demon? In 2008, a woman who had an elf on the shelf started to notice little things missing from her home during the Christmas season. First it was her keys, then it was some of the kitchenware, and then some other more valuable items. She also started to notice that things started to go wrong. Appliances that were relatively new just stopped working. Leaks were happening in the home and the electricity kept going on and off. She had no idea what the catalyst of these problems could have been until she linked it to the elf on the shelf. They only started happening when she brought that thing into her home. Since then, other rumors have surfaced about people noticing things that are missing from their homes whilst having this little elf in their house. The story has snowballed to a place where there is now a community of people who swear these things aren't working for Santa at all, but actually for a mischievous demon. A demon who simply wants to wreck the Christmas season and cause chaos in your home. It should also be noted that the items and things that went wrong kept getting worse and worse the longer you kept that thing in your home. So who knows how bad things could get if you keep that thing in there for the entire season. Number 1 on this list is a devilish name. A rule associated with the elf on the shelf is that the family housing this elf must give it a name. Typically people go down the silly route and name it something like Mary Martha or Twinkle Toes or something ridiculous like that. All of that is fine and good and very in the Christmas spirit. However, there are a few names that you need to avoid when you're naming your elf on the shelf, or you may run the risk of devilish possession. Names such as Lucifer, Bile, Gorgo, these names are all infernal names, which are names that are linked to anti-hero figures used in satanic rituals. If you ever give your elf on the shelf an infernal name, and there's actually a full list of infernal names that you can look up if you want to double check, but if you do this, then you just open the door for your elf to become possessed by a demon. Just because the door is open doesn't mean that any demon will walk through it. However, you don't really want to be giving them the option in the first place. Christmas time is a time of love and family and also to celebrate religion, all really nice things. If you are a demon though, this is one of the worst times of the year and you are itching to cause any type of chaos that you can and ruin the fun. If a demon takes over your elf on a shelf due to its name, then there's no limit to the amount of nastiness it could cause. Not only could this devilish puppet haunt your home, torture you in the night, or wreck your style of living, but now that a demon is in your home and possessing this elf, what's to say that it won't start trying to possess you? Also, typically these elves leave a little bit after Christmas, but there's no timeline when it's possessed by a demon. That thing could stay and destroy your home and even your lives for however long it feels like. My advice is to stick to the silly when naming your elf on the shelf.
Number 2. Santa Claus. Although he has managed to clean up his image in recent years, you can tell a lot about a man by the company he keeps. Such is the case with the evil creature most commonly known as Santa Claus. This creature seems to use elves as indentured servants to build toys for the children who obey his commands, while any elves who speak up against his treatments or try to unionize tend to be driven out of the workshop into the harsh conditions of the North Pole, where the elements soon overcome them, leaving them as little more than frozen snowmen. He is known to watch children for hours at a time, always knowing if they are awake or asleep. You can lock your doors and close your windows, but nothing can stop this menace from getting in, as he is able to slip through even the most narrow of chimneys to pass judgment on your children. Although he has a reputation for being kind and jolly, this is likely because he leaves the dirty work of dealing with children he deems naughty to his subordinates. As mentioned before, Krampus is often depicted coming to homes after Santa, who leaves behind coal to let the demon know which children to take to hell for minor infractions like jumping on the bed. He also has been known to work with figures like Belsnickel, Necht Ruprecht, and Ru Klaus. who are tasked with punishing the naughty children with floggings, while leaving Santa to reward the good. Yes, the gifts that Santa leaves are impressive, but the fact that he associates with and encourages such brutal forces makes me think that he may not be as jolly or saintly as he would have us believe. They say if you know a demon's true name, you have power over it. Is Santa really Satan? Is he tricking us into worshipping him by making us view him as a benevolent figure who we worship every year with altars of milk and cookies? Perhaps. Perhaps not. But yes, that is what I am claiming. Number 1. The Grinch. This creature originates in legends from a very small village called Whoville, believed to be located somewhere in Scandinavia. The Grinch is not a who, but is really more of a what, who is believed to live in the nearby mountains with his fierce dog, Maximilian. The Grinch is supposedly a green and furry creature of incredible cruelty and strength, capable of lifting objects many times his size over his head with ease. For reasons unknown, he seems to hate the entire Christmas season. It is theorized that this hatred might stem from an improperly screwed-on head or shoes that are too tight. Other tellings of this story state that it is a result of a genetic condition that has caused his heart to shrink 2 sizes too small. But these reports are unverified. He is known to disguise himself as Santa Claus in order to break into people's homes and steal their Christmas gifts and decorations, often leaving only some hooks and wires and crumbs that are too small for even mice to enjoy. It is believed that this green creature has access to demonic powers, as folklore states that he is capable of robbing an entire town in one night. He is more terrifying than any other creature on this list, as he apparently has a brain full of spiders and a termite-infested smile. Clearly, he is an agent of Satan, as his soul has been described as an appalling dump heap overflowing with the most disgraceful assortment of deplorable rubbish imaginable, mangled up in tangled up knots. This king of sinful sots is able to disguise himself as jolly old Saint Nick in a manner so convincing that even eyewitnesses are fooled, showing that he must have some kind of hypnotic brain-altering powers capable of making the locals hallucinate. The only way to be sure that you are dealing with the Grinch instead of the real Santa Claus is by his trademark aroma, which permeates any area he enters. In fact, when compiling a list of descriptions made by his victims, the 3 most commonly used words were stink, stank, and stunk. Who is this green creature? Why does he target Christmas cheer? Perhaps it is best not to know, and to instead focus on preventing his wrath. Legends say that he has an aversion to noise, and can be kept away if you dance with jing-tinglers tied onto your heels, blow into your flu-flubers, bang your tar-tinkers, bang your gar-ginkers, beat your trum-tookers, slam your slew-slonkers, beat your blum-blookers, or wham your who-wonkers.